from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up today on AgDay, a ploy to turn a possible trade war into a trade advantage.
We've heard the Chinese say directly that they would retaliate against American soybean imports.
Why soybean growers say it's ag products that can address a growing trade deficit. More shakeup in the RFS world with a possible government bailout in the works. And agribusiness breaking down the technical trades in commodities today. And breaking the mold in growing corn.
The seed technologies have brought us to where I do feel that the genetic potential for corn is about 800 to 850 bushels in a bag when you go to open it.
Meet the man behind the 500 bushel per acre corn crop this year as we head in the country.
AgDay, brought to you by the Chevy Silverado, the most dependable, longest lasting full-size pickups on the road.
Good morning, I'm Tyne Morgan. Clinton Griffiths is on assignment. U.S. soybean growers now trying to play to the president's pain point of a growing trade deficit, saying avoiding a trade war is one way to eat away at the trade gap. Politico reporting that just last week, President Donald Trump telling his cabinet secretaries to hit China with steep tariffs in response to allegations of intellectual property theft. Those tariffs could be placed on more than 100 Chinese products. But the American Soybean Association sending a letter to the president this week urging him to modify, if not reverse, his recent decision to slap tariffs on steel and aluminum imports in order to avoid a trade war. ASA says for the last 20 years, U.S. soybeans have contributed more to the U.S. trade balance than any other agricultural product, and that agriculture can make a powerful contribution to the president's goal of reducing the trade deficit, but only if policies enhance ag's competitive edge in the global marketplace. Patrick Delaney of American Soybean Association says retaliation will send shockwaves through the farm economy.
We've heard the Chinese say directly that they would retaliate against American soybean imports to that country. That's a huge deal. They buy more of our beans than the rest of the world combined, to the tune of $14 billion last marketing year.
Now, to give you an idea of just how many soybeans are traded between the U.S. and China, ASA says in 2017, U.S. farmers produced a record 4.4 billion bushels of soybeans. At the same time, China purchased 2.3 billion bushels, or about 52%. USDA recently showing that China accounts for 65% of all U.S. soybean exports, and in 10 years, that share could grow to 70%. Well, more shakeup in the Trump administration as the president fired Secretary of State Rex Tillerson on Tuesday. And now some in the ag world are worried about what it could mean for future trade with China. The president announcing he will replace Tillerson with current CIA Director Mike Pompeo. Tillerson was a former oil executive, but had taken a softer stance than some in the White House to addressing the trade imbalance with China. The change occurs less than a week after the president's chief economist, Gary Cohn, resigned over a differing opinion with the president's tough stance on trade. Well, the saga over the renewable fuel standard continues as the Environmental Protection Agency is now proposing to pardon East Coast refiner Philadelphia Energy Solutions from complying with the nation's RFS. It's a government bailout with a settlement filed Monday proposing to waive a portion of the $350 million owed by Philadelphia Energy with the renewable fuel standard. The EPA agreeing that the refiner will only have to pay about half of those costs now, and the other half once and if the bankruptcy settlement is resolved. The proposal still needs to be approved by the bankruptcy court, but the dispute now has a 10-day public comment period. The renewable fuels industry is opposing the move. The refiner is blaming the RFS for its financial woes. Renewable Fuels Association CEO Bob Dineen saying, quote, "At first blush, this strikes us as rewarding bad behavior, and it sets an extraordinarily bad precedent," end quote. Pete Meyer of S&P Global Platts agrees.
It sets a dangerous precedent. I mean, it just sets a precedent that the target is moving what seems to be on a day-to-day basis now. Don't forget, Senator Cruz showed up at PES and gave a rousing speech before he went to Washington. That's less than a month ago. And now all of a sudden there seems to be a little bit of a rescinding of the debt. I mean, it's a tough call, but I would understand that I would understand why the ethanol business in general is upset with this, because it's become a moving target.
Now, after the proposal hit, the price of RINs fell to the lowest point in about a year to just under 40 cents. Well, a lawsuit that spans over a couple years over the MIR 162 trait is coming to a close. In a nationwide class action lawsuit, Syngenta will pay a $1.5 billion settlement to corn farmers, grain handling facilities, as well as ethanol plants for corn priced after September 15th of 2013. Our reporting partners at AgWeb say all farmers are eligible for the settlement. That includes those who did not participate in previous Syngenta lawsuits. The plaintiffs allege that Syngenta introduced the Agrasure Viptera corn before it was approved by China, and that resulted in an income loss after Chinese ports rejected corn shipments containing the trait. Now, in a statement, Syngenta said, quote, "This settlement does not constitute an admission by either side," end quote. So how could you be eligible to receive that money? Well, check your mailboxes, as once funds are available, farmers must submit a claim form that will likely come in the mail. Now, the settlement must be approved by a federal judge in Kansas, and the settlement does not include the exporters of Cargill and ADM that are also suing Syngenta. Well, the weather phenomenon behind the drought in the Central Plains this winter is fading away. At just 3 months in duration, this La Nina is one of the shortest in about a decade. Australia's Bureau of Meteorology says the sea surface temperatures in the Pacific Ocean have steadily warmed since December. When the Pacific waters cool, the reaction to the atmosphere causes La Nina and impacts weather patterns. In addition to the dried out fields from Kansas to Texas, La Nina is also to blame for the parched soybean crops in Argentina. Well, let's turn now to meteorologist Mike Hoffman for his crop comments today. Mike?
Good morning, Tyne. Let's start off in Denison, Minnesota. Matt Braun says the semis are out of the shop, washed and ready for sod harvest. The U.S. Drought Monitor shows a small chunk of Minnesota, roughly 15%, is abnormally dry. A little to the north, though, Landon Friesen showing a beautiful morning in Manitoba. Temperatures are lingering in the low 30s there. And taking a look at the wind speed forecast, you can see the northeast, eastern Great Lakes going to be the windiest areas this morning. That will expand into the mid-Atlantic, parts of the Central Plains, and then especially the southwest. And the southwest is going to be a focus tomorrow, not necessarily in the morning, where it'll be a little breezy in the Tennessee and Ohio valleys, northern plains, eastern Montana. It really becomes windy as we head through the afternoon hours, especially south of the Four Corner region. But there are other places around the country that turn kind of windy tomorrow as well. We'll have your forecast for the rest of the week coming up in just a few minutes. First, here are some hometown temps.
Your next piece of equipment is on MachineryPete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on MachineryPete.com.
Still to come, getting technical with the technicals of trading. And later, the farmer who knows how to grow record-sized corn crops says the potential is there for any farmer to get those massive numbers.
With a uniquely powerful formulation of proven ingredients, Resicor corn herbicide gives you extraordinary power.
Who wants dessert?
At least when it comes to weeds.
Well, as we said earlier, Clinton is on assignment, but before heading out, he talked about technical trading with one of our experts in that field.
Mike Flores Trading, our guest today, is going to show us some of the technical indicators that we might be able to use as we're trying to make decisions on what these markets are going to do, Mike, because, you know, a lot of times these fundamentals just don't make sense.
The less you know, the better often.
Yeah, that's right. The less we know, the better. All right, so walk us through some of the indicators that you use as a technical trader that say, hey, the market may be moving this direction.
Right. The first one is called a 1, 2, 3 bottom, or an ABC bottom, whatever you want to call it. And so here's an example of it. So the market goes down and makes a new low. And that's point number one. Then for whatever reason, it goes up, gives you a rally. That's point number two, that high point. And then it comes back down again. And the key of this 3 point is that it's got to be higher than the 1 point. It's got to be a higher low. Where your buy signal comes in is when this point is taken out on the upside. So as soon as you buy it, your stop has to go below the number one point. A new low would take you out of the move. And as you can see, these are multi-week moves that you've gotten. This one, over a 3-week period, let's say, so a high, a low, a high, a lower high, and then you sell it when it goes below this number 2 point. And as you can see, we had quite a big decline.
Sure.
And so you see an example of it here. What's interesting on this high, it called the high perfectly this summer, where this whole formation only lasted a couple of weeks. But as soon as that number 2 point was exceeded, bam, down you go, and you really had a big tumble. And as we come into the end of September, we're potentially making a 1, 2, 3 bottom. It hasn't completed itself yet. Once these highs are taken out, that's your buy signal. Your stop goes underneath, and you could see a significant rally up as we go through the
so
fall.
Really it boils down to higher highs and lower lows, and those being your indicator from a technical trading perspective. Roll to the next slide there, guys, and we'll look at this other example. I think this is over a longer period of time, though, Mike.
Right. This one, yeah, this goes from October to March, this whole formation here. So the high point, a break, a lower high, and when that's exceeded on the downside, you really had a big tumble that lasts a multi-week, and it's a very large money move that you had. And now, so we're forming a low, potentially a low here now, as we get into the early October. So your buy signal won't be occurring until this high is taken out. So that has not occurred yet. But if you do buy it, your stop's got to go below here.
Okay. All right. So those are some pretty easy ways, ways that you can look at a chart and kind of have some sort of idea of what you may expect.
This will give you a longer term perspective of where the market's going, a trade that lasts, let's say, 3 to 5 weeks.
Right. Perfect. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for being here. We'll be back with more Ag Day in just a minute.
For a free 2-week trial to Mike's trading recommendations, call Flores Trading at 800-841-2108. Ag Day, brought to you by the Enlist Weed Control System. More weed control, less drift and volatility, maximum yield potential.
Welcome back. Time now to check weather with meteorologist Mike Hoffman. Mike, this storm in the Northeast, these numbers just keep growing. They are getting hammered this week.
I know. We're in that pattern where those storms that do make it off the East Coast really expand in that very warm water of the Gulf Stream, and boy, that's just been cranking up those storms. And that storm sure isn't moving very quickly this morning. It's just continuing to pound, like Tyne said, a lot of New England, the eastern Great Lakes as well. Cold front, secondary cold front, first one's well offshore now, kind of moving through the mid-Atlantic. Not a lot of moisture with that, but some lake effect snow all the way down into the central Appalachians behind that system. This is a pretty strong system as well, with another one lingering behind it that's going to be kind of folding in, and another cold front coming through the northern plains. Won't have much moisture with it, but it is going to keep it from warming up very quickly in those areas, kind of keeping it on the chilly side across the northern plains. You can see by later today, still snowing most of the Northeast. Rain and mountain snow in the west. That continues back into parts of California and Oregon as well. Heading through tonight, storm system finally starts to take off to the north, but the secondary system kind of diving in. We'll have a little bit of snow in the eastern Great Lakes with that, and there's still lingering snow in New England. The first system coming off of the eastern portions of the Rockies by tomorrow with an area of low pressure forming along that, kind of stalling out that front through the middle of the country. And there's that next system coming into the west coast. More rain, mountain snows for central northern California. That's actually good news overall. Those areas didn't get a whole lot during this winter season, this past winter. Precipitation estimate over the past 24 hours. You can see the big time amounts in the Northeast. Of course, that's all snow, and pretty big amounts there in the northern and central Sierra Nevada mountains, and we continue to add it in those areas. We continue to add it in the Northeast. Both of those places have mainly snow, though, and when you look at the snowfall estimate, already huge amounts on the ground in much of New England. We're going to add a little bit more over the next 36 hours, and we're going to add more in the higher elevations of the Rockies as well. Highs today, 30s and 40s in the Northeast Great Lakes, 60s by the time you get to the Gulf Coast. Low temperatures tonight going to drop off pretty cold into the teens and 20s across the northern tier of states, 40s and 50s southern plains. And by the time we get to tomorrow afternoon, it starts to warm up a little bit temporarily for the southern plain states, everybody else kind of on the chilly side. All because of this huge trough kind of in the east. As you can see, that's that big storm moving up. We have more energy kind of feeding through the ridge, so the ridge gets knocked down, comes back up again by the middle of next week into the western plains, but still a trough, east and west. Same pattern. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. Heading to Fresno, California, first of all, mostly cloudy with showers around, high of 62. Ottumwa, Iowa, partly sunny, rather mild, high around 59. And Lynchburg, Virginia, it'll be cold there with clouds and sunshine, high of just 39.
What would be a dream yield for your crops? Later, meet a farmer who teaches how to reach that lofty goal. But first, USDA makes changes to organic livestock rules. Details straight ahead.
AgDay, brought to you by Prosaro Fungicide from Bayer.
Well, more stringent regulations for organic producers and handlers are now going away. The Organic Livestock and Poultry Producers Practices Final Rule was introduced more than a year ago. Critics say the rule would have increased federal regulations on organic producers, driving up costs and ultimately driving them out of business. But supporters of the rule say removing the regulation will create loopholes for larger processors to exploit. USDA determining the rule exceeds the department's statutory authority and would have negative effects. The withdrawal goes into effect on May 13th. Well, in other news, still red-faced after a plan to draw Tyson Foods to Northeast Kansas went south. The state's lawmakers approved legislation aimed at attracting large chicken processing plants to Kansas. This bill would allow bigger poultry barns within a mile of residential areas. The House approved it Monday. The Senate approved it last month. You may remember Tyson tried to bring a $320 million chicken processing complex to the town of Tonganoxie, but the company withdrew the plant after backlash from the community. Lawmakers in favor of the bill say the revising state standards will encourage Tyson or other companies to bring new jobs to the state. Well, the national average yield for corn last year was 176 bushels an acre, but a Virginia farmer topped 500, and he says the industry can do even better. His story is next.
Save time each day and receive the latest market prices directly to your cell phone with market updates. It makes it effortless to stay aware of shifting market prices. Just text Markets 8 to 31313 to get started.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Tractors, hay tools, utility vehicles, mowers, and more. Visit KubotaUSA.com today.
Well, one Virginia farmer set a new world record for corn yields in 2017. At 542 bushels per acre, it's a feat that may seem unachievable to most, but he says his recipe for success is simple.
Boy, it was something special.
For Charles City, Virginia farmer David Hula, growing impressive yields is nothing new. But in 2017, he achieved what seemed to be the impossible.
After we started pulling the ears back and counting the kernels per ear and doing the math, we thought we had something pretty good then, but then it's not until the combine hits the field that you actually realize what you had.
And what Hula had was extraordinary, pulling in a yield of 542 bushels per acre.
Of course, everybody thinks there's a silver bullet. They think it's a special piece of dirt.
Hula says not all his acres hit that 500 bushel per acre mark, but he believes the yield potential is there for some ground to produce even higher yields.
The seed technologies have brought us to where I do feel that the genetic potential for corn is about 800 to 850 bushels in a bag when you go to open it.
He uses more of a defensive strategy for growing corn.
Today, we can't make more bushels. It's just a system on how we're able to protect the bushels once we plant it.
He says with the potential to grow 800 bushel per acre corn, it's defending those bushels from the start that's key.
The seed's going to carry you so far. It gives you that foundation, and then the management side is the key to where it allows you to save as many bushels as you can. Because you can't make bushels, you're just protecting them throughout the growing season.
While on his quest for higher yields, Hula says he's learned having even emergence in the spring, plus generating strong plant health is key in growing more bushels. But in order to do so, he says growers need to break out of the mold.
Most growers aren't willing to try something new. They're kind of in that insanity model. They just keep doing the same thing over and over again.
He says having high-yielding corn isn't cheap, so if your yield goal increases, so should your cost of production.
What I would recommend to most growers is to take one section of some field and try something new that they haven't done in the past and just see how it filters out. And then if they have good success there, then try it on some more acres the following year or try multiple things. Because I've had a lot more failures than I've had successes. And if I continued to kind of stop because I failed, then we wouldn't be where we are today.
By taking his yields to new heights, Hula hopes that 800 bushel per acre corn isn't far out of his reach. Now, Hula told us he continues to hear about some ag companies' goal of raising 300 bushels per acre in corn by 2030. And he says with the national average last year at 176 bushels per acre, he thinks the foundation is there for that lofty yield goal to become a reality. Well, that's all the time we have this morning. We're so glad you tuned in. For all of us at Ag Day, I'm Tyne Morgan. Have a great day in farm country.
Ag Day, brought to you by Ram Commercial, America's longest lasting heavy duty pickups.